Hello, my dear students. I hope you all are fine. In this lecture, I will discuss about the preeclampsia. Before discussing preeclampsia, I just want to discuss with you the term pregnancy-induced hypertension. It's clear from its name that because of pregnancy or because of gravid state, hypertension occurs. PIH is defined as the hypertension that develops or occurs as a direct result of a gravid state. Gravid state means because of pregnancy. It includes, first one is gestational hypertension, second one is preeclampsia, and third one is eclampsia. Gestational hypertension, in this the hypertension occurs in the preeclampsia. With the hypertension there is a proteinuria, and in preeclampsia with hypertension plus proteinuria there is a convulsions. In this lecture I will only discuss about the preeclampsia in detail. First of all, its definition. Preeclampsia is a multisystem disorder. Why it is known as multisystem? Because it includes various organs such as brain, kidneys, uterus. Of unknown etiology means the cause behind preeclampsia is not clear, characterized by development of hypertension to the extent of 140/90 mm of Hg or more with proteinuria after the 20th week in the previously normotensive, means before 20th week of gestation there was no any hypertension, no proteinuria in the previously normotensive and non-proteinuric women. So what is preeclampsia? It is basically a multisystem disorder in which the hypertension and proteinuria occurs after 20th week of gestation. Next is diagnostic criteria of preeclampsia. First one is hypertension, next is edema, third one is proteinuria. Normally under preeclampsia there are only two diagnostic criteria, that is hypertension and proteinuria, as small amount of edema occurs in a normal pregnancy even, but if this edema is present more than normal, that is pathological, then it is included under the diagnostic criteria of preeclampsia. First one is hypertension. If the previous blood pressure reading is not available or is not known, then 140/90 mm of mercury is considered to be hypertension in preeclampsia, and if previous BP is known, then there is a rise in systolic pressure by 30 mm of mercury and there is a rise in diastolic pressure by 15 mm of mercury. Next is mean arterial pressure under hypertension. Mean arterial pressure is the pressure inside the arteries during a single cardiac cycle, and the normal mean arterial pressure is 70 to 100 mm of mercury. And if the previous mean arterial pressure reading is available, then there is a rise in mean arterial pressure by 20 mm of mercury, and if the previous reading is not available, then MAP is 105 mm of mercury or more is considered to be hypertension. Next is edema. There is a fluid retention in the body, pitting edema over the ankles. What is pitting edema? When a part is pressed where the edema occurs, there is a pit or depression remained at that part even when the pressure is relieved. That is known as pitting edema, which occurs over the ankles, and because of edema there will be a rapid gain in weight, that is more than 1 pound per week and more than 5 pound per month. 1 pound is equal to 0.45 kg and 5 pound is equal to 2.26 kg. Next is proteinuria. Presence of protein in urine which is more than 0.3 gram per 24 hours. That is, in the 24 hours urine, there is a more than 0.3 gram protein that is considered as a proteinuria. Next are the risk factors for preeclampsia. First one is primigravida, that is the woman who is pregnant for first time. Mostly in the case of young or elderly pregnancy, there are the chances of having preeclampsia. Next is family history. If there is a family history of preeclampsia or hypertension, that is also one of the risk factor for preeclampsia. Next is placental abnormalities. If there is a defective placentation, that is, the placenta is abnormally attached with or not properly attached with the uterine layers, in that case there is a decreased blood supply to the placenta. And if there is a decreased blood supply to the placenta, in return placenta releases a factor which causes endothelial dysfunction. Endothelial is a thin inner layer of the blood vessels which control the vascular tone or which maintain the vascular tone, that is the balance between the vasoconstriction and vasodilation. And if there is an endothelial dysfunction, that results in a vasoconstriction. As a result, preeclampsia occurs. Next is obesity. Obesity is also one of the risk factors for having preeclampsia. When the BMI, that is the body mass index, is more than 35 kg. Next is pre-existing vascular disease, that if there is a disease of blood vessel which is already existing and which cause endothelial dysfunction, so there are the chances of preeclampsia. Next is new paternity. During the first pregnancy, if there is no any preeclampsia, then in the second pregnancy with the new father, there are the chances of having preeclampsia. Next is thrombophilias. In this is a disease in which there is an imbalance of blood clotting factors. So there are the chances of formation of blood clots in the blood vessels. This is also one of the risk factor for preeclampsia. Next is etiopathogenesis. Etio means causes and pathogenesis is how the disease develops because of these causes. First one is hypertension. Under hypertension, the main pathology is endothelial dysfunction and vasospasm because of various reasons and because of various causes, because of various factors that causes the endothelial dysfunction and vasospasm, and which in result cause preeclampsia. So I'm going to discuss the various reasons, causes or factors which results in endothelial dysfunction and vasospasm. As we studied in its definition that it is a multisystem disorder, like it involves the uterus, kidney, placental bed and brain. First one is trophoblast invasion and uterine vascular changes. Trophoblasts are basically cells which invaded in the spiral arteries of the uterine layers. As you can see in this diagram, in the normal pregnancy during first trimester, the trophoblast cells are invaded in the spiral arteries up to decidua. And then in the second trimester during 16 to 18 weeks, the second wave of trophoblast cells invaded in the spiral arteries of myometrium. And when these trophoblast cells are invaded, they replaces the endothelial lining and the muscular arterial wall with the fibrinoid formation. And this fibrinoid formation results in the distended arteries, that is the arteries are distended. As you can see here, there is a fibrinoid formation because of the trophoblast cells, and as a result the arteries are distended, and when it is distended there is a more blood flow to the placenta and there is a less pressure inside the arteries. While in the case of preeclampsia, here the trophoblast cells are invaded during first trimester up to the decidua, but there is a failure of second wave of trophoblast cells, and because of which the endothelial lining and the muscular arterial wall is not replaced with the fibroid. As a result, there is no distension of arteries. If there is no distension of arteries, there is a less blood flow to the placenta and there is a high pressure inside the arteries. And if there is a high pressure, it results in the preeclampsia. Or because of vasospasm, preeclampsia occurs. After trophoblast invasion, next is oxidative stress. There are free radicals in our body. These are basically oxygen containing molecules with the uneven electrons. Uneven electrons means in the outer shell either there is only one electron or there is 7 electrons. As we know that if there is an uneven number of electrons present in the outer shell, it easily react with the other molecules. So it is highly reactive. The free radicals are highly reactive. These are easily react with other molecules and cause chemical reactions in our body, and these chemical reactions are, some of them are beneficial while some of them are harmful. And on the other hand side, there are antioxidants in our body which donates one electron to the free radicals and make them less reactive. But if there is an imbalance between the free radicals and the antioxidants, for example, if there are more free radicals in our body, then these free radicals start doing damage to the fatty tissues, DNA and proteins. And if there is an abnormal lipid metabolism because of free radicals, it results in the endothelial damage. And if there is an endothelial damage, it results in the preeclampsia. After oxidative stress, next is inflammatory mediators. For example, cytokines. Cytokines causes endothelial damage, which in result causes preeclampsia. Next are vasospasm. After the endothelial dysfunctioning, next is a vasospasm. Imbalance of vasodilators and vasoconstrictors cause vasospasm, which in result causes preeclampsia. Prostaglandin and nitric oxide, these are vasodilators, and angiotensin 2 and thromboxane, these are vasoconstrictors. In the case of preeclampsia, the concentration or the secretion of angiotensin 2 and thromboxane is more as compared to the prostaglandin and nitric oxide. And if the concentration or secretion of angiotensin 2 and thromboxane is more, it results in the vasospasm, and as a result, preeclampsia occurs. After hypertension, the second one is edema. Edema is a fluid retention in the body, and in the case of preeclampsia, there is a fluid retention occur over the ankles. First one is increased oxidative stress. Because of the free radicals, there is an increased oxidative stress, and because of increased oxidative stress, there is an endothelial injury. That is the injury to the inner layer of the blood vessels, and if there is an injury, it increases the capillary permeability, and if the capillary permeability increases, the fluid leaked from the capillaries, and if fluid leaked from the capillaries, it comes out from the circulation and accumulated at the extracellular spaces, which causes edema. And decreased osmotic pressure. This osmotic pressure prevents the leakage of capillaries, but if it is also decreased, so it results in edema. And last one is proteinuria. In the case of proteinuria, there is a spasm of blood vessels of kidney. If there is no proper blood supply to the kidneys, there is anoxic, means absence of oxygen. So because of no oxygen, there will be changes in the endothelium of blood vessels of kidney, and because of the changes in the endothelium, it increases the capillary permeability and the proteins leaked from the blood vessels. And simultaneously, there is decreased reabsorption of proteins. If there is no reabsorption of proteins, then it results in proteinuria. Next are the clinical types of preeclampsia on the basis of sign and symptoms. There are two types of preeclampsia, that is mild and severe. Under mild, the blood pressure is more than 140/90 but less than 160/110 mm of mercury, and in this case there is no proteinuria. While in the case of severe preeclampsia, the blood pressure is more than 160/110 mm of mercury, and there is a protein excretion which is more than 5 gram per 24 hours. Next is oliguria, when the urine output is less than 400 ml per 24 hours. As this is a multi-system disorder which I already discussed, and because of the vasospasm, because of the decreased blood supply to the various organs, that results in a decreased tissue perfusion, and when there is a decreased tissue perfusion, it affects various organs such as kidneys, uteroplacental bed, lungs, brain, and liver. So because of decreased tissue perfusion, there will be oliguria, and if there is a decreased tissue perfusion, or if there is a decreased blood supply to the liver, there will be damage to the liver cells, damage to cells of liver, and if there is a damage to the cells, as a result they release more enzymes. The cells release more enzymes. And what are those enzymes? ALT and AST, that is alanine transaminase and aspartate transaminase. Next is HELLP syndrome. What is HELLP syndrome? When there is a damage to the cells of liver, there will be a hemolysis, that is destruction of or breakdown of RBCs, and there will be a elevated liver enzymes and low level of platelets, which is less than 1 lakh. And when this HELLP syndrome occurs, there are certain symptoms which occurs, that is nausea, vomitings, epigastric pain, which occurs below the ribs or at the upper abdomen, that is epigastric pain. Next are the clinical features of preeclampsia. Under clinical features, there are symptoms and signs, and under symptoms, there are mild symptoms and alarming symptoms. First of all, mild symptoms: slight swelling over the ankles, tightness of the ring on the fingers. As in the case of preeclampsia, there is a swelling over the fingers, and because of that swelling, the ring which the woman with preeclampsia wears become tight. This is one of the earliest manifestations for preeclampsia. Next is gradually, means slowly the swelling may extend to the face, abdominal wall, vulva, and even the whole body. Next is alarming symptoms. Headache, which either located at the occiput region or frontal region. Next is disturbed sleep, diminished urinary output because of the decreased tissue perfusion, epigastric pain, eye symptoms, blurring, scotomata, that is the partial loss of vision. Next is dimness of vision or complete blindness because of preeclampsia, which becomes normal after the delivery. Within 4 to 6 weeks, the vision becomes normal. Next are the signs of preeclampsia: abnormal weight gain, hypertension, edema. These signs I already discussed under the diagnostic criteria of preeclampsia. Pulmonary edema. Because of leaky capillaries, there are the chances of pulmonary edema or bronchopneumonia. Next is abdominal examination. As we already discussed, that there is a decreased blood supply to the uteroplacental bed. So abdominal examination may reveal evidences of chronic placental insufficiency. What are those evidences? Such as scanty liquor, that is less amniotic fluid, or growth retardation of the fetus. So because of chronic placental insufficiency or because of less blood supply to the placenta, there are the chances of intrauterine growth retardation, and this growth retardation suggests that there is a decreased blood supply to the placenta, which revealed by the abdominal examination. Next is the order of manifestations. In the case of preeclampsia, the earliest manifestation is a rapid weight gain. Then visible edema or hypertension occurs, and at last proteinuria. Next are the investigations of preeclampsia. Urine. With this, we check the oliguria and proteinuria. Next is ophthalmoscopic examination for checking the vision. Blood values for checking the low platelet count. Next is antenatal fetal monitoring, basically for intrauterine growth retardation. So these are the investigations which are mainly done in the case of preeclampsia, just to reveal these signs and symptoms. This is the management scheme or the management which is basically done in the case of preeclampsia. Hospitalization, either daycare or admission. After hospitalization, the patient should be encouraged to take proper rest. Blood pressure should be checked 4 times in a day. Check the platelet count, coagulation profile, as there are the chances of developing DIC, that is disseminated intravascular coagulopathy, in the case of preeclampsia. Next is assess the uric acid level, creatinine level, LFT, that is liver function test. Check the 24 hours urine for protein. Next is ophthalmoscopy. Fetal well-being assessment, and fetal well-being assessment should be done through following test, that is DFMC, daily fetal movement count, just to check the risk, non-stress test, cardiotocography, biophysical profile, ultrasonography, Doppler 1, Next is administer antihypertensive drugs if the diastolic blood pressure is more than 110 mm of mercury. Then there are the 4 possibilities. First one is, if after administering antihypertensive drugs the condition is under control, then if the pregnancy is at term, then patient should have to stay in the hospital and there are the chances or tendency to cross the expected date of delivery. And in the case of at term, conduct the delivery. But if there is a preterm, in that case discharge the patient and ask the patient to attend the antenatal clinic. The second possibility is, if the blood pressure is continuously high, in that case try to continue the pregnancy till 37 completed weeks or at least 34 weeks. Then conduct the delivery. In the third possibility, if there is continuously rise in blood pressure to a severe level even after the administration of antihypertensive drugs, and in the fourth possibility there is an addition of ominous symptoms. Ominous means threatening symptoms. In that case, couple counseling should be done and transfer the patient to the TCC, that is tertiary care center. Prophylactic anticonvulsant therapy should be done just to prevent the seizures, the threatening symptoms, for example seizures. Magnesium sulfate is given. Conduct the delivery, and before conducting delivery steroid therapy should be done. Steroid therapy is done just to mature the lungs of the fetus. So that's all about the management of preeclampsia. My dear students, I hope you all are clear with this topic. But if you have any kind of query, then please ask me in the comment section.